With unique insight into all of this, we turn to Ambassador Nick Burns, a career American diplomat, former National Security Council Director for Russian Affairs, and former U.S. Representative to NATO. He now teaches diplomacy at Harvard. Mr. Ambassador, what are the stakes in what we've seen today?
Well, it's been a consequential day, Scott. We haven't had a NATO member shoot down a Soviet or Russian aircraft since 1952. And so the stakes are very high, that the Russians learn the lessons of what happened, but also that this can be de-escalated so that there's no further action. And Russia and Turkey and the other countries can go back, hopefully, trying to combat ISIS.
Well, the Russian president called it a stab in the back. Could this escalate?
It could escalate. I think the United States and President Obama are going to work very hard to see that it doesn't. But there's an important principle at stake here, Scott. Every nation has a right to protect its own borders. And President Obama sided with the Turks today in saying that they have that right. It was a gross violation of international law for the Russians even to fly close to that border, but to cross it, that's a red line that can't be crossed. And so I think the lesson here for the Russians has to be they're fairly isolated right now. They don't have many friends in the Middle East. They say that they want to attack and defeat ISIS, but they're not really fighting ISIS.
You know, the Turks fired on this aircraft after it had been in their airspace for only about 30 seconds or so, we're told. Why do you think the Turks would make a point of shooting this airplane down?
I think because there's a history here. The Russians have violated Turkish airspace several times since the Russians began air operations in Syria 2 months ago. And the Turks have warned the Russians publicly and privately that there's going to be a response at some point. The Russians may have thought that the Turks weren't serious, but they found out today that they were. It's a tragedy. It's not something, obviously, that the United States wants to see happen, but the Turks do have a right to protect that border. The emphasis now has to be on making sure it doesn't happen again.
Ambassador Nicholas Burns, thank you very much.
Thank you.